Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a complex stack of sources, the history, the economics, the legal battles, and distill the absolute most critical insights just for you. Today, we are strapping ourselves into one of the most iconic and now one of the most controversial machines in global industry, the John Deere tractor. When you think John Deere, you instantly picture it, right? That distinctive green and yellow, the leaping deer logo, a brand identity that's been around for over 155 years. And maybe you even hear that classic slogan, nothing runs like a deer. Oh, but this deep dive is far more than just farm nostalgia. Our mission today is to trace the 188-year history of Deere and Company. We're going to start with a small 19th century blacksmith shop that solved this very specific, crippling Midwestern soil problem. Then we'll trace its explosion onto the global stage, review its massive corporate footprint, and land squarely on this cutting-edge legal and ethical fight over who truly controls the software inside a modern $800,000 smart machine.
It's a journey from polished steel to proprietary silicon, and the transformation is, well, it's staggering. We're analyzing sources that detail the company's pioneering roots right up through its current legal battles with the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Justice, and organized farmer groups. And to grasp the scale, you have to start with the snapshot. Founded in 1837, headquartered in Moline, Illinois. Today, the corporation is an industrial giant. We're talking U.S. $51.72 billion in revenue in 2024, with 75,800 people worldwide, and trading on the NYSE as a component of the S&P 100 and 500. It's an American institution that is fundamentally changing what it means to own heavy equipment.
That is a massive economic footprint. But before it was a corporation, it was just one man trying to keep his family afloat. And he did it by solving a problem everyone else had just accepted. Let's rewind nearly 2 centuries to where it all began. A simple piece of steel solving a very complicated problem. So John Deere, the man, he starts his American story in 1836 by basically fleeing failure. He was an established blacksmith in Rutland, Vermont, but a series of financial setbacks related to the Panic of 1837 led him to move west to Grand Detour, Illinois. He was trying to escape bankruptcy and just start fresh. He gets there, opens his shop, a modest 1,378 square feet in 1837, and he was just a general repairman, fixing tools, building pitchforks and shovels.
Right, but the key here, though, is recognizing the timing of all this. The early 19th century saw this massive migration into the American Great Plains, including what they called the Prairie State of Illinois. This land was incredibly rich, fertile. It was beckoning settlers. But as soon as they put their plows into the ground, they hit this crippling technical bottleneck, a bottleneck that threatened to stop the entire westward agricultural movement in its tracks.
Okay, let's unpack this bottleneck because this is the really interesting part. The engineering dilemma they faced in the Great Plains was that the soil was too good.
Exactly. The soil was thick, wet, and incredibly sticky. It was a combination of decaying plant matter and fine earth. And the traditional plows, whether they were cast iron or wood reinforced with iron, they couldn't handle it. As the farmer dragged the plow, the soil would immediately just stick to the moldboard.
So they have to stop constantly.
Constantly. Stopping to clean the plow, which was just backbreaking labor, it dramatically reduced efficiency and severely limited how much land a farmer could realistically work in a season.
So John Deere, the local blacksmith, sees this issue firsthand. He realizes the core problem isn't the farmer's strength or the horsepower, it's a material science problem. What was his specific innovation and, why did it work where others had failed?
It wasn't just about building a stronger plow. It was about understanding friction. In 1837, Deere pioneered a solution by taking a highly polished piece of steel. The sources suggest he initially used a discarded, finely tempered Scottish steel saw blade, and he fashioned it into the plowshare and moldboard. The critical insight was the polish and the composition of the steel itself.
The polished surface, that was the trick.
That was the breakthrough. That smooth, polished surface combined with the shape of the moldboard, it just generated less friction. As that rich, sticky soil hit the polished steel, it couldn't stick. It just slid right off, keeping the implement clean. They called it self-scouring. And this simple design addressed a fundamental agricultural problem. It was a truly application-driven aha moment that solved a critical bottleneck for agriculture and made tilling the prairie state's soil efficient for the very first time.
You really can't overstate the impact of this. This single innovation didn't just sell plows, it fundamentally enabled the development of the American Great Plains. It allowed new farmers to rapidly till enormous tracts of land.
It solved the one thing that had been hindering settlement. It's why the Smithsonian Museum, years later, named Deere's original plow design as one of the objects that changed American history. It completely transformed the farming landscape. And from a business perspective, the demand was instantaneous. It forced Deere to fundamentally rethink his entire operation.
Right, that immediately changes the business model. You go from a local blacksmith taking one-off orders to someone solving a statewide, then a national agricultural crisis. And the old way of doing business manufacturing only as ordered was just way too slow.
He realized that wasn't sustainable for scaling at all. So he initiated this strategic shift to pre-manufacturing. He started building plows before they were sold, stacking up inventory. This allowed customers not only to see the finished product, but to buy it and take it home right away. Word spread so quickly, he had to scale up production dramatically.
And that initial scaling starts with infrastructure. In 1843, he partners with Leonard Andrus, and they build a two-story factory on the Rock River. They used water power to run the machinery, and production jumped from maybe 100 plows a year to around 400 plows a year almost immediately. That's a huge leap.
But even 400 a year wasn't enough, and the location was limiting. The partnership with Andrus ended in 1848, and Deere made this incredibly decisive strategic move to relocate. He chose Moline, Illinois, and this decision was based purely on logistical superiority.
Better infrastructure.
Way better. Moline offered immediate access to the growing railroad network and, crucially, the Mississippi River. That river access was essential for bringing in raw steel from Pittsburgh and shipping the finished plows out to expanding markets.
This move really marks the transition from, craftsmanship to true industrial production.
Absolutely. He formed a new partnership with Robert Tate and John Gold in Moline, and with that new infrastructure, production just exploded. It rose to over 200 plows a month by 1849.
A month. So what's that? 2,400 a year.
Exactly. From 400 a year to 2,400 a year in just a short span. This is where modern mass manufacturing really begins for the company.
By 1853, John Deere buys out his Moline partners, gets full control, and the family legacy starts to solidify when his son, Charles Deere, joins business. And they smartly diversified beyond just plows, adding things like wagons, corn planters, and cultivators.
That diversification was crucial for weathering economic cycles. By 1857, they were making almost 1,120 implements per month. And even though the panic of 1857 caused a national recession that hit them hard in '58, the business survived largely because of that diverse product line.
John Deere served as president until 1886, but it seems like it was Charles Deere who really took the managerial reins early on. He was the visionary when it came to distribution, which is just as important as the product.
The product was great, but Charles recognized that access and trust were the ultimate competitive advantages. In 1868, the company formally reorganized and incorporated as Deere and Company. Then, starting in 1869, Charles spearheaded the introduction of marketing centers branch offices, and he began setting up this network of independent retail dealers nationwide.
Why was that independent dealer model so successful it's still around today?
Well, it achieved two things at once. It centralized distribution and inventory, but it maintained a local, trusted face for sales and service. Farmers didn't just buy a plow, they bought an entire ecosystem of support. This network gave the company incredible reach and staying power. And as we'll see later, this model selling and servicing only through authorized dealers is the crux of their current legal conflicts. It's a strategy that worked for a century, but now presents a major vulnerability.
That's a great narrative link. Before we jump into the 20th century, I have to mention this fantastic nugget of trivia from the sources. The company was trying everything back then. In the 1890s, when bicycling was a national craze, John Deere actually manufactured and sold a few bicycles.
A brief foray into personal transportation before they realized that horsepower, not pedal power, was their true calling.
The 20th century brought on massive pressure, particularly with the formation of the International Harvester Company. That merger combined McCormick, Deering, and others. And this new competition forced Deere to evolve beyond just implements and wagons. They had to get into the power business, gasoline tractors.
Right. Deere understood that the implements were secondary to the power source that pulled them. They experimented internally, developing their own designs like the Dane all-wheel drive tractor. But their strategic analysis showed that building a brand new competitive tractor from scratch would just take too long.
So they chose the path of strategic acquisition instead.
Exactly. In 1918, they purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company in Waterloo, Iowa. This was a hugely important move because Waterloo already made the very popular and proven Waterloo Boy tractor. It gave Deere an immediate, functional, and well-regarded tractor line without years of R&D lag.
That acquisition really defined their operations for the next half-century. They kept selling the Waterloo Boy until 1923, and that's when they introduced the now iconic John Deere Model D. And that machine, based on the expertise from the acquisition, marked their definitive, successful entry into the modern tractor market under the Deere name.
And that focus quickly expanded beyond just tractors to harvesting. Efficiency demands meant combining tasks. So in 1927, they produced their first combine harvester, the John Deere number 2, and then the smaller, more popular number 1 in 1928. These were pull-type machines, but they were adapting fast.
And we see that innovation continuing right after World War II, which brought this incredible economic energy back into American agriculture.
Yes. In 1947, Deere introduced its first self-propelled combine, the Model 55. This was a massive leap.
You no longer needed a tractor to pull it.
Right, the machine drove itself. This freed up the tractor for other essential tasks and allowed for far better maneuverability in the field.
And then in the mid-1950s, another huge innovation arrives, one specific to American crop rotation.
The attachable corn head. This innovation allowed corn picking, shelling, and cleaning all in one continuous, efficient operation. Before this, these were often separate, really labor-intensive tasks. The corn head revolutionized corn harvesting. It turned a multi-stage process into a single-pass operation.
Before we delve deeper into the mid-century mechanics, we should touch on the company's behavior during national crises, because these actions really define their brand loyalty.
The Great Depression stands out. There's this widely reported story that during that catastrophic era, the company reportedly never repossessed any equipment from American farmers who were struggling to make payments.
That's an astonishing policy for a large corporation during a depression, really.
Whether it was calculated PR, understanding the cycles of agriculture, or genuine compassion, the impact was profound. It cemented a relationship of trust and tremendous brand loyalty that lasted for decades. It positioned Deere not just as a supplier, but as a partner to the American farmer.
And that partnership was tested again during World War II. The president then was Charles Deere Waitman, the great-grandson of the founder, and he immediately commissioned into the U.S. Army to direct the Farm Machinery Division of the War Production Board. The company pivoted entirely to support the war effort.
They shifted their immense manufacturing capacity almost overnight. They were producing military tractors, complex M3 tank transmissions, precision aircraft parts, ammunition, and even specialized equipment like mobile laundry units for troops in the field. It showed their industrial agility and commitment, which further burnished the brand's reputation as an American stalwart.
The post-war economy then demanded global reach, and Deere responded aggressively to that.
In 1956, Deere began its major international expansion by acquiring the German tractor manufacturer Heinrich Lanz AG. Lanz gave them immediate entry into the European market, and this continued with factories established in places like Argentina, where they produced several iconic series, demonstrating their commitment to serving specific international markets.
All of these developments set the stage for one of the most audacious and transformative product launches in company history, Deere Day in Dallas in 1960.
This was a defining moment for the company's identity and its market share. You just can't overstate the spectacle. Deere flew 6,000 dealers from all over the world to Dallas. It was dubbed the largest commercial airlift of its type ever attempted. The multi-day event was held across various venues, including the Cotton Bowl parking lot for demonstrations.
I read that they even put a new tractor with a diamond-covered nameplate inside the Neiman Marcus department store downtown. That sounds less like an ag expo and more like a major auto show.
It was meant to be seismic. For decades, Deere had been defined by its reliable but technologically aging two-cylinders machines. Deere Day in Dallas introduced the new generation of power, a complete shift to modern 4- and 6-cylinder tractors. The 1010, 2010, 3010, and most importantly, the 4010.
Why was the 4010 so revolutionary at the time?
It was a brute force machine with modern engineering. The 4010 was rated at 80 horsepower, but it tested at 84, instantly establishing it as one of the most powerful two-wheel drive farm tractors available. Its success was immediate. It moved Deere into the modern era, boosting their market share from 23% in 1959 to a dominating 34% by 1964.
So they became the top manufacturer in the U.S.
They did, and the successor, the 4020, is often cited as the most popular tractor John Deere ever made. That single product generation catapulted them past their competitors.
It showed that farmers were ready for power, speed, and modern design.
And crucially, this new generation also heralded the pivot beyond just raw power to the operator experience. Control and comfort became the new frontier.
Right. Spending 12 hours a day in an open field, exposed to dust and heat and engine noise, it was grueling.
Exactly. So in 1972, Deere introduced its Generation 2 Sound Idea tractors. These feature the optional sound guard body, an insulated, completely integrated operator's cab with a rollover structure. It came standard with heat and air conditioning.
An air-conditioned workspace in a field machine in 1972, that's truly innovative.
It changed the quality of life for farmers overnight. It turned the tractor into this climate-controlled, comfortable workplace. And get this, you could even get an 8-track tape player as an option.
An 8-track.
Can you imagine? It signals the beginning of integrating consumer technology into heavy machinery.
And they continued that refinement in 1983 with the 50 series, adding crucial mechanical sophistication. Things like a new 15-speed power shift transmission and optional mechanical front-wheel drive for better traction.
These were incremental, crucial steps towards sophisticated, powerful equipment that was just easier to operate.
However, we need to pause on one area where corporate strategy arguably failed them for about 2 decades: the combine wars. Even as competitors like International Harvester were pioneering the efficient, high-capacity rotary combine in the late 70s, Deere stubbornly stuck to its conventional Walker combines through the 80s and 90s.
It's an interesting case study in corporate inertia and, devotion to a legacy system. Deere's conventional walkers were excellent machines, and their engineers were deeply committed to them. They were reliable, they had strong brand loyalty.
So they were prioritizing reliability and familiarity over maximum efficiency.
Precisely. It was a strategy based on perfecting the existing mechanical model rather than risking a total design overhaul. The thinking may have been that the rotary concept was too risky or that their market share was too stable to be threatened.
But they paid a price for being slow to adapt.
They did. The market started demanding the higher throughput and gentler handling of the rotary systems. It forced them to catch up rapidly. So in 1999, Deere finally introduced its own rotary innovation, the single-tine separation, or STS, system on their Maximizer combines. And while they were late to the party, the STS was highly advanced. It demonstrated they could innovate, but only after years of competitive pressure.
That brings us right up to the modern era. We've gone from a blacksmith forging a saw blade into a plow to a massive global corporation manufacturing sophisticated, climate-controlled, 8-track equipped machines. That sets us up perfectly for the 21st century transformation into the smart corporation. Today, John Deere is the largest agriculture machinery company in the world. Its headquarters are still in Moline, Illinois, and about half of its 75,800 employees are in the U.S. and Canada. But the company's structure is entirely global.
What's fascinating here is the sheer breadth of their operation and how diversified the revenue streams are. It's no longer just about the iconic green tractor. If you look at the 2023 revenue breakdown, production and precision agriculture leads at 43.7%, then construction and forestry at 24.2%, and small agriculture and turf, lawnmowers and stuff at 22.8%.
Okay, so that's nearly 90% of revenue coming from equipment sales across 3 huge sectors. But there's a critical segment that often gets overlooked, and it's the key to understanding their financial power and their leverage over customers.
That would be financial services, which accounted for 7.7% of 2023 revenue. And this is a really essential financial nugget for understanding the right to repair conflict. John Deere Financial is a massive central part of the ecosystem. As of 2017, it had a $2 billion loan portfolio, and crucially, it accounts for up to a third of the company's total income.
Wait, hang on, a third of their income from financing?
Up to a third. It creates this powerful dependency loop. Most modern farm equipment is incredibly expensive, up to $800,000 for a combine. Few farmers can afford that without financing.
So John Deere isn't just the manufacturer, they're the dealer, and they're the bank.
Exactly. And that vertical integration creates profound leverage. They control the sale, they control the parts supply, and they control the financing. It makes the threat of restricted repair access even more potent.
It fundamentally changes the relationship from manufacturer-customer to financier-client. And their product breadth is it's everything heavy.
Looking at the variety, they cover the whole supply chain. Agricultural equipment includes tractors, combines, planters, sprayers. Construction has excavators, loaders, backhoes. Forestry has harvesters, forwarders, and they make the diesel engines for all of them.
And we can't forget the technology that links all this massive equipment together. Their proprietary Starfire GPS systems. This moves us directly into the biggest transformation of the century: automation and software.
This is the pivot from mechanical power to processing power. The future of Deere is entirely based on proprietary tech designed to maximize efficiency, and they've made strategic acquisitions to lead this shift.
Which acquisitions stand out as defining their future?
2 in particular. Blue River Technology for its computer vision and machine learning. This is what enables their see and spray system, and Bearflag Robotics, which focuses specifically on autonomous ag technology.
Let's talk about See and Spray. The outline mentions weed reduction. Can we quantify the efficiency gains here for the listener?
It's revolutionary for input costs. Traditional spraying involves broadcasting herbicide over an entire field, weeds, crops, everything, which is wasteful and expensive. Blue River system uses cameras and machine learning to identify individual weeds in real time. It then sprays only the individual weed, not the surrounding soil or crop.
And the savings.
It's reported to reduce herbicide use by up to 80%.
80%. That single-handedly justifies the price tag of a smart machine and changes the entire economics of farming.
It absolutely does. And the other culmination was at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2022. They introduced a fully autonomous tractor that can till a field without an operator, managed remotely from a smartphone.
The larger goal here is staggering, tying everything into the cloud.
The stated corporate goal is to connect 1.5 million machines in service and 500 million acres in use to its cloud-based John Deere Operations Center. Think of the data streams. Every second of every machine's operation, every bushel harvested, every drop of fuel consumed, it all flows back to the cloud. And that data relies on their proprietary GPS and cloud platform, locking farmers into the Deere ecosystem.
That shift from physical mechanics to cloud-based operations is the bridge to our next, most contentious section. But first, we need to quickly address the recent economic and political headwinds this global titan has faced.
Right. Despite the innovation, they're not immune to market fluctuations. In 2024 and 2025, Deere announced significant layoffs across Midwest facilities in Illinois, Iowa, and Kansas, citing decreased demand.
And there are political headwinds associated with their global manufacturing footprint, too. The sources note they announced plans to possibly move some component production to Mexico.
And this is where we just shift to impartial reporting on the context provided. That global shift drew political fire. Donald Trump in 2024 publicly threatened to impose 200% tariffs on any Mexican-made equipment in response.
And there's also an important note on the company's complex tax structure.
A 2018 report showed that Deere, along with many other large corporations, paid an effective federal tax rate of 0% or less because of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This whole complex political environment, global manufacturing, threatened tariffs, leveraged tax structures, it shows the massive scale we're dealing with now. It's far beyond that local Midwestern employer.
And all of this complex global financial and technological power converges on the single defining question facing the agricultural world today. If the machine is controlled by software and connected to the cloud, who truly owns the machine? And this final battle over the machine's code brings us full circle. We started with John Deere the man who created the steel plow to solve a farmer's labor problem and grant them greater self-sufficiency. Now we are looking at the critical issue defining modern equipment ownership, the right to repair conflict.
This issue is critical because late-model John Deere equipment, those sophisticated smart tractors and combines, are explicitly designed to be non-serviceable by the owners or independent third parties. Only authorized John Deere dealerships have the necessary access to the diagnostics and the specialized tools.
And that access is tied directly to the computer code running the machine. They need this proprietary code not just for repairs, but also to calibrate replacement parts. Without the software handshake, the machine is just a very expensive paperweight.
Deere's core legal argument relies heavily on intellectual property law, specifically the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA. They claim the internal software license prevents any modification by independent mechanics and farmers.
Let's clarify this. The DMCA was designed primarily to protect digital media music, movies, ebooks from piracy. How does a law meant for copyright protection apply to a 1,000-horsepower physical tractor?
That is the critical tension. Deere argues that repairing the machine, which often requires running diagnostic software or overriding certain locks, involves bypassing digital rights management, or DRM, and the DMCA forbids bypassing DRM controls. So by saying the farmer only licenses the software that runs the machine, they're leveraging this copyright loophole to protect their service and parts monopoly.
So the argument is, you bought the steel and tires, but you only licensed the operational brain.
Critics, most notably the Electronic Frontier Foundation, argue that's exactly what it is. They say this strategy creates an exclusive monopoly for John Deere dealerships, effectively undermining the fundamental right to repair an asset you physically purchased.
And the real-world consequences are staggering, especially when a combine breaks down during harvest. Every hour of downtime costs thousands of dollars.
Timeliness is essential, and the issue of remote locking illustrates the extreme implications. The manufacturer can remotely lock equipment, The most famous anecdote happened during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian troops stole Ukrainian farm equipment, and the dealers were reportedly able to remotely disable it, rendering it all useless.
Wow. So while that was a unique form of digital defense in a war zone, it profoundly demonstrates the ultimate control they have. If it can be disabled when stolen, it can be disabled for other reasons too.
Precisely. And faced with costly, time-consuming dealer repairs, resourceful farmers did what they always do. They found a workaround.
The sources mentioned a fascinating one involving international software.
They resorted to using unauthorized, circumventing software to perform essential repairs. And get this, because of varying international regulations, this included obtaining and using Ukrainian versions of John Deere software to overcome the company's domestic repair lockouts.
They were using hacked Ukrainian software to fix their own tractors in Nebraska.
It highlights the level of frustration and the desperate need for self-sufficiency.
This high-stakes resistance led quickly to political and legislative action.
The movement for the right to repair gained significant traction. By early 2022, right-to-repair bills focused on ag equipment had been introduced in 26 U.S. states, and the U.S. Senate introduced a federal bill.
Deere, facing this mounting pressure, made a critical strategic move in January 2023. They signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, with the American Farm Bureau Federation, the AFBF.
This was a brilliant corporate maneuver. On the surface, it looked like a major concession. Deere agreed to allow farmers and independent shops to purchase access to John Deere software, manuals, and diagnostic information.
But this MOU raises an important question about enforcement. Was this a genuine policy shift or a stalling tactic?
This is where we need to apply critical thinking. Skeptics, like Walter Schweitzer of the Montana Farmers Union, immediately pointed out the key caveat. An MOU is a private sector agreement. It lacks legal enforcement. Deere can theoretically pull out if any binding legislation is successfully enacted.
And the most crucial part of that agreement was a trade-off.
An explicit one. As part of the MOU, the AFBF agreed to encourage its state farm bureaus to refrain from introducing, promoting, or supporting federal or state right-to-repair legislation that went beyond the MOU's commitments.
So they traded a potential legal right for a non-binding promise. And in exchange, the AFBF agreed to stop lobbying for legislation. That's a classic strategy to diffuse legislative momentum.
It absolutely stalled many state-level bills, but the legal battle didn't end there. It escalated into massive antitrust litigation.
The antitrust lawsuits are perhaps the most damaging challenge, moving this from a copyright issue to a market monopoly issue.
Correct. In 2022, 13 lawsuits from farmers were consolidated in federal court. They alleged that John Deere and its dealers unlawfully conspired to monopolize the market for repair and maintenance.
And the U.S. government signaled that the stakes were indeed national.
In February 2023, the Department of Justice filed a statement of interest in the case, unequivocally opposing Deere's motion to dismiss. The DOJ argued that these repair restrictions harm consumers and the public by driving up costs and limiting choice.
And the courts have been receptive to these claims, which was a crucial legal victory for the farmers.
A major ruling in November 2023. A U.S. district judge denied Deere's motion to dismiss the lawsuits. This was huge. The judge found that the complaint had sufficient factual allegations to support the conclusion that Deere has the ultimate control of the repair services market. This confirmed the legal viability of the monopolization claims.
And the legal pressure only continued to build, reaching the highest levels of government.
Absolutely. In January 2025, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, joined by 5 states, filed its own antitrust lawsuit against Deere. The FTC argued explicitly that Deere inflated repair costs for farmers by actively preventing independent shops from operating. This governmental intervention shows this is now viewed as a clear market failure driven by corporate policy.
And we should note, this isn't just an American issue, it's a global conflict.
That's right. Agricultural bodies in Australia, for instance, are lobbying hard for specific repair laws. Their current law only covers the auto sector, leaving massive, expensive farm equipment unprotected. It's a worldwide battle.
It truly is. A worldwide battle between the physical ownership of hard assets and the proprietary control enforced through digital code. So what does this all mean? We've traced the 188-year journey of Deere & Company. We started with John Deere, the man who created the self-scouring steel plow in 1837 to solve a farmer's labor problem and grant them efficiency and greater self-sufficiency.
And we arrive at Deere & Company today, A global financial and industrial titan that uses highly advanced proprietary software protected by federal copyright law to control those very same farmers' ability to service their multi-hundred-thousand-dollar machines.
The key takeaway here is this fundamental tension between two conflicting ideas. On one hand, technological advancement is leading to incredible precision agriculture, autonomous tractors, and massive efficiency gains. On the other hand, the basic concept of ownership rights is being challenged when that technology is proprietary and protected by copyright law like the DMCA.
It forces us to redefine what it means to own something heavy and physical when its operational keys are digital, held exclusively by the manufacturer, and tied to a vertically integrated financial system. The initial vision was about empowerment and self-sufficiency for the user.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the learner. If a machine designed for increased efficiency one you purchase outright, maybe even financed through the manufacturer, can be remotely locked, or requires continuous costly involvement from the corporation for essential upkeep, has the modern farmer gained efficiency at the cost of genuine self-sufficiency? What is the true value of physical ownership when the digital keys are held by a corporation? It's a question that defines the modern relationship between user and technology, and the answer is being decided in courtrooms right now.